Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for the 6th of July, 2017. Hope you guys are doing all right after the 4th of July holiday. Let's take a look at what's going on out in the tropics. This is the track map for Tropical Depression 4, and it finally got its act together last night. Enough of a low shear environment in here and moisture and the warm ocean underneath that it became TD number 4. It most likely won't be able to do much more after that, because if we look at the visible satellite animation this afternoon, you can see that some pretty dry, dusty air is headed its way. This is the depression. It's got fairly good outflow aloft, as evidenced by these sort of feathered looking clouds. If we zoom in, we can see that a little bit better. And there it is. You can see that it has pretty decent upper air support. It's moving along fairly briskly now at over 20 miles per hour, but the structure of the depression is pretty impressive, especially for July in the deep tropics, another sign of a more than likely busy season ahead. But the dry air, I'm telling you, that is a big killer of these systems, which is obviously good news for land interests that these might impact down the road. When you see these clouds right here, these stratocumulus clouds, this sort of milky, sort of like, looks like the side of an oak tree. You ever seen that? They're called stratocumulus clouds, and that shows a stable atmosphere, especially in the mid-levels. You can't get thunderstorms to develop through these very easily, if at all. The air mass is usually a little bit warmer in here, and in this case, because it is originating off of Africa, what we call the Saharan air layer, it's a big smothering component, so to speak, keeping the tropical depression from strengthening. And if this wasn't prevalent right now, and by the way, these Saharan air layer outbreaks are fairly common for July, so it's not that unusual. And if it wasn't there, this would be on its way to becoming a hurricane pretty soon, probably, due to the favorable conditions around it. And we can see that the vorticity signature at the 850 millibar level, or about 5,000 feet in the atmosphere right here, you notice it's nice and round, a little bit oval shaped, but it's not elongated like this little piece of energy off the North and South Carolina coast in Virginia here. This is all vorticity as well, but this is more associated with a front and a trough of low pressure where the energy is spread out over a larger area. With our tropical depression, the energy is focused around that circle, so to speak, and it's got that going for it, but that dry air coming in from the east. And we can see that here on the Saharan air layer analysis from the University of Wisconsin site. Very, very dominant, and it's moving faster than the system, so it'll probably overtake it. In fact, it's basically kind of pushing everything out in front of it, and it'll smother TD number 4 with some dry enough air to keep it from developing much at all from here on out, and eventually it'll just become a remnant low. Looking in the eastern Pacific, another area well on its way to developing. That being said, probably won't amount to too much because water temperatures in the eastern Pacific up through here are colder than normal, and so this will die out fairly soon, even if it becomes a named storm. No worries to Mexico or the Baja. Hey, you remember Tropical Storm Cindy in the Gulf of Mexico just recently? And it stirred up the waters through here. Let's use yellow, that'll show up better. All this area was below average and kind of mixed up as Cindy made landfall over here. All that southerly wind flow and storminess in the eastern and central Gulf really brought down the water temperatures. Well, that was a few weeks ago, and here we are on July the 5th. This is when this snapshot was taken, and water temperatures have really rebounded. That green color in there, that's 29 degrees Celsius. The yellows over here, this would be 30 Celsius. And then up against the coast of Florida near Cedar Key and north of Tampa, 31 degrees Celsius water temperatures. We're talking about mid to upper 80s in some cases Fahrenheit. That's pretty warm, and it just shows you how fast the water temperatures can rebound, and that the Gulf of Mexico will be primed for hurricane activity, if any activity is to be found later in the season. And speaking of the season, I wanted to show you this. This is from Dr. Phil Klotzbach and his team's update yesterday for the rest of the hurricane season. They do an outlook here in July, just kind of updating what they know in the past. And sort of forecast that out for the future, I guess you would say. And this is the wind shear anomaly, the departures from normal that are forecast from the climate forecast system for August, September, and October. And you can see that over the deep tropics here, that these blues, let's see if I can get this to activate so I can draw on it, all of this area here indicating below average wind shear, and that would tend to promote a fairly vigorous main development region through here as these tropical waves come off Africa. Also note the absence of wind shear in the Caribbean Sea, the Western Caribbean, through that time period. If the CFS is correct in this forecast, and Dr. Klotzbach mentions that right here, that if that latest forecast from the CFS here is accurate, then we could potentially see a much more active main development region than what has been observed over the past few years. So, this is the science coming into play. This is what it looked like in June, and the June wind shear was below average across this region, and the forecast is for that to continue through the remainder of the season through October, and probably into November. So take that to heart, that, no reason to panic or whatever, but it's a sign that the season could be very busy. So people in the islands, it's not just a U.S. problem. All the way, Bermuda, the Canadian Maritime, Central America, Mexico, anywhere in the Atlantic Basin that is within reach of hurricanes or their leftovers should be paying closer attention this year, especially since the last several hurricane seasons have been, for the most part, certainly with the exception of last year, not very busy on the whole. We've had one or two storms that have been notable, but this year there could be more than that. We'll just have to wait and see. You never know for sure, but the signs seem to be pointing in the direction of a very busy season ahead. All right, well, that's it for me for today, and unless TD4 becomes a problem down the road, that'll be it until Monday, and we'll resume things on Monday with a look at sea surface temperature anomalies in the week ahead as we plow through July. So have a great rest of your week ahead and a weekend when it gets here. With the 4th of July happening on a weekday, especially in the early part of the week, it always makes me think that it's the weekend already. Nevertheless, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. That's my website. And for Hurricane Pro and HD, I'll talk to you again on Monday.